Karma in the Mach Loop. Before dawn breaks over the Welsh hills of Cadair Idris, headlamps are already bobbing up the steep footpaths that lead to the ridges above Corris and Dolgellau. Figures in waterproofs climb in silence, tripods folded over their shoulders like rifles, breath visible in the cold air. By the time the sun clears the hills, they will be sitting in the same spots they have occupied for years, sometimes decades, waiting for something that lasts less than 4 seconds. This valley has no official name on any tourist map. Pilots call it Low-Flying Area 7. Everyone else calls it the Mach Loop, and for nearly half a century, it has served as one of the Royal Air Force's premier training grounds for low-level tactical flying. Jets descend to 250 feet, hugging the contours of the land the way a river hugs its bed, banking hard between ridgelines at speeds that make the world blur. For the pilots, it is rehearsal for war. For the people gathered above, cameras raised, it has become something closer to ritual. Alan, 64, has been coming here since 1991. His father brought him the first time, and he has returned often enough that he no longer needs to check a map to find his favorite ledge. He sets up his folding chair without looking, the way a man sets a table in his own kitchen. Everyone thinks it's about the jets, he says, still watching the empty sky. It's not about the jets. The jets are just the excuse. He waits 4 hours, sometimes 6, for 4 seconds of noise and motion. If his attention drifts, a glance at his phone, a moment spent adjusting a strap, he misses it entirely, and there is no second chance. It gives you exactly what you bring to it, he says. That's karma, isn't it? Not fate. Just attention, repaid or not. There is no ranger stationed in the valley, no official body enforcing behavior, and yet an UNWW, written code governs everyone who climbs these hills. Roz, a photographer in her 30s who drives up from Bristol most weekends, lists its terms without hesitation. Don't step on the crops. Don't leave litter. Don't crowd someone who arrived before you. And when a farmer asks you to leave his land, you leave immediately, without argument. It is a code enforced not by law but by consequence. Break it, and the punishment falls on everyone who comes after. Gareth, who farms the land below one of the most popular viewing points, has watched the culture around the loop shift over the years. Most visitors, he says, are considerate, polite, careful, quick to ask permission before crossing a wall. But it takes only one bad actor, a gate left open, sheep startled by someone scrambling over a hedge for a better angle. And the consequences land on the whole community of spotters, not just the individual responsible. When trust breaks, fields close. Several of the most famous vantage points along the loop have been fenced off entirely in the past decade, casualties of carelessness that had nothing to do with the people who now find themselves locked out. Alan has watched it happen more than once. Half the best spots we used to stand in are gone now, he says, gesturing at a weathered private land sign nailed into a fence post. Once trust goes, it doesn't come back easy. Somebody else spends it, and we all pay. The pilots understand a version of this same law, though they rarely use the word karma to describe it. Wing Commander David Hale, retired, flew the Mach Loop for 11 years before stepping away from active service. Low flying, he explains, punishes arrogance swiftly and without appeal. The valley doesn't care about your call sign or your logbook, he says. One bad decision, one moment of overconfidence, and the terrain collects its debt. He has known pilots who treated the exercise casually, as though the stakes were no different from a simulator. Almost without exception, he says, they didn't last. Not because anyone disciplined them directly, but because the valley itself eventually did. Karma isn't a bad word for it, actually. What you put in, the place gives back. Discipline earns you a career. Carelessness earns you a headline. Much of what happens on the ridge above the valley is not the arrival of the jets at all, but the waiting that precedes them. Long stretches of stillness interrupted occasionally by the crackle of a radio scanner picking up distant air traffic chatter, or by a rumour passed quietly down the line of tripods. Ros has learned not to measure these days by outcome. Some visits produce nothing, 6 hours of wind and grey sky and no aircraft at all. She used to consider those days wasted. She no longer does. "You learn to just be here," she says. "Watch the light change on the hills. Listen to the wind. The jets end up being almost a bonus." Alan, sitting beside her, agrees. There is something rare, he says, in a group of strangers waiting together on equal footing for an outcome none of them can control or predict. It is not something easily found elsewhere in modern life, and it may be part of what keeps people returning to a wet Welsh hillside at 5 in the morning, year after year, long after the novelty of jet noise might reasonably be expected to fade. And then, without warning, it happens. The scanner crackles. A voice, clipped and urgent. Contact, inbound, low level. Along the ridge, every camera rises at once, as though the spotters share a single nervous system. The jet appears suddenly out of the valley's folded terrain, a streak of grey against green, banking hard between two hillsides, gone almost before the eye can process it. The sound arrives a beat late, rolling thunder chasing an image that has already vanished. 4 seconds, and then silence returns to the valley, as completely as if nothing had happened at all. The spotters lower their cameras. Some laugh, some say nothing, simply sitting with what they have just witnessed. Alan exhales and begins packing away his gear, still talking as he works. "That's it. That's the whole thing," he says. 4 seconds you'll remember for a year. Bought with 4 hours you'll forget by tomorrow. Fair trade, I reckon." He pauses, considering the thought further. "That's karma and all. You don't always get what you want, but you get what the day's willing to give you, if you've earned it by sticking around." By dusk, the valley empties. Spotters gather their tripods and flasks, nod to one another in passing, and disappear down footpaths they know by heart, even in failing light. Below, Gareth closes the gate to his field for the night, latching it with the same unhurried care he uses every evening, and glances briefly up at a sky now empty of everything but cloud. There is no plaque marking this place, no visitor centre, no official record of what happens here each morning. What exists instead is an understanding, fragile and unwritten, shared between farmers, pilots and strangers who climb a hillside before sunrise for the sake of 4 seconds. Karma, in its oldest sense, was never really about luck or fate. It was about consequence, the plain truth that what a person puts into the world eventually returns to them in a shape they rarely expect. In the Mach Loop, that truth arrives at roughly 450 miles an hour and vanishes just as quickly, leaving behind neither a photograph nor a sound, but something closer to a debt quietly repaid.